cross your legs like that.
Oh, let me put shoes on just in case. Fuck.
Do you get often like a seller,
Yep.
specifically going, like they've used you before, a friend used you, and they're like, oh, like they're instructing the agent to use you? Or is that very rare?
So we get, clients will come directly to us by saying, I saw you at an auction, I want you to auction my property. Whether they've, so then...
just from seeing you at an auction?
Yeah, correct. So then we pass on our business card. So then we'll say, hey, we do exclusive work with Marshall Group or with Chen Yao or whoever it is.
Yep.
And say, if you want to utilise me and my service, just make sure you use that agent. Or alternatively, if they call us directly, then we will pass on that. We'll start probing because the real estate mode kicks into gear. It's like, have you thought about selling? When you're looking at coming on the market, have you spoken to an agent? What sort of price range you're thinking? Get all that information content. Would you like me to pass on your details to someone who I would recommend? Then just gather it all, pass it on to a lead. Which works.
Dumb question. You're an ex-agent yourself?
Yeah, correct.
The way you're talking then, I'm like, oh, you've obviously got, and if I should know this already.
No, absolutely. 2003, started in Quinda Waters on the Central Coast development.
Yeah, right.
So golf course.
Yeah, right.
I used to sit in the back office.
You look like a golfer.
I love it. So much fun when I get to play. But I was hitting from the office to the green on the 15th. Craig Parry designed course, and I was like, this is awesome. I love real estate.
This is good.
What the hell's
It's always like this.
It's always. So then I had to show houses and the rest of it, try to get into a sales job at the position, from a sales assistant to the sales manager position, which was pretty ballsy, I guess. But he wouldn't get out of it because it was too cruisy for him. I got all the leads, sent it to him, he did the deal.
And he didn't want to add someone else on to sit next to him?
Well, it was through Clarendon. So Clarendon Homes didn't want to give another person's salary away. So then got out. Funny enough, to the agent, literally suited up, when dropped off my resume to 6 or 7 offices, got 3 job offers. And one of the agents who offered me a job at the time, he told me to sell a pen in the same instance I dropped the resume. I was like, shit, what do I do? How do I do this? Anyway, kicked into drive and he offered me the job right in front of me. I said, look, I need to think about this.
Do you remember what you said about selling the pen?
Well, I asked what kind of pen it was. He's like, mate, it's just a normal big pen. I'm like, I remember the pen like so vividly. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, let's sell this. Sold it well enough to be able to offer me a job.
That's good.
And funny story though, just presented to his office now, which is doing over 50 transactions a month. And we've just picked up their business. So start doing in-room auctions I'm actually waiting on a call back, so about 4-week time.
Yeah, nice. And do you do many in-room auctions?
We do. We've got 3 locations in Newcastle. We've got Lower North Shore. That's on a pause at the moment just due to COVID and post-COVID, and then all the rest of the board members not wanting us to do auctions in that facility, and also a change of agencies. A lot of the agencies have changed ship in that area.
Yep.
So it's just a reboot area. And then there'll be the Central Coast, and we're looking at down South Coast as well.
Yeah, nice.
So it's a good option. Good option for buyers to be able to go to.
I love an auction house because obviously I've usually got my property where that's number 1 and number 8, but not only there's potential I can pick up a buyer, right? Because someone walks away and I'm branded up and got my car, you saw that, it's all branded.
I did see that.
But yeah, smart move, I've already had a couple of that. But I also learn, I'm like, oh, okay, because even though I may not be bidding on a property, I sort of, through my job and through yours, I'm aware of it, I know the street quite well, I'm like, oh, that 4-bedder townhouse, and that was not many. I wonder if that would go for 1.7 or is that a 1.9? And just to see what actually happens, I can take that to my next. Same what you do. Take it to the next conversation. Like, how often do you get asked, "What's going on in the market?" That's a real pulse take of what's happening in the market. Not going, "Oh, this is what I read in the newspaper." Was that an auction, or you're actually reading? This is exactly what I saw. There's 5 bidders, or there's 1 bid, or it got passed and they did this
And that's happening at the moment. There's, like, we were up in Newcastle 2 weeks ago. Well, I wasn't, one of my guys were, last Thursday actually, and 5 auctions, all passed in.
And all sold by Monday?
Not all sold, so 2 of them are under negotiations now, almost exchanged, so they're in cooling off, and the other 3 are getting closer to sale, which is the process to get them down in expectation as well, because they may have been a price a touch higher.
Correct.
So vendors' expectations come down a little bit, which is great. But yeah, the guys up there do really well. But it's interesting to see the in-rooms on on-sites, the comparisons at the moment, because I truly believe on-sites are getting a little bit more traction, which is interesting because there's people turning up, registering and competing, which is the crucial part. A lot of them used to turn up, just registered just to show strength and show that they wanted to buy but didn't do anything. But now turning up, registering and bidding and securing.
So it's better at a property auction, you're saying?
Correct. Well, it's not so much better, but the difference that I can see at the moment is that we're getting interest on the day randomly, that they're securing the property after bidding and after registering for no reason other than they've seen it online, or they've just driven past and literally just first time they've seen it, which is crazy in all sense. You must know that.
Like happens.
No contract viewing, no nothing. Finance is potentially approved, may not be approved, could be cash sale.
I've been pipped to the post by that buyer who's turned up in the day and driven past and decided to get it.
It's unbelievable. And
I sit there with my clients going, I don't know what to say to you right now, because we might have looked at it for 4 weeks.
Can't say anything.
Thorough assessment.
Yep.
Like this guy, and look, cash buyers. Like how many properties are done? 20-30% of properties in Sydney are done with cash.
It's insane. Absolutely, and so especially in particular certain suburbs where you're looking at the moment, lower North Shore to inner west to wherever those areas are, like you can see the big difference.
Huge.
Like whether you can see the buyers that are capped out at a certain max because they say it. Oh, I've got no more money. Well, you've just given your strategy away. You probably should never say that at an auction, but it's interesting.
It happens quite a bit, doesn't it?
It does. Only last week, again, over in Mount Colah actually, and this gentleman did miss out on the property. He's like, mate, I'm out at 1,330. I was 1,340. We're already over reserve at 130,000.
Yep.
I was like, mate, just give it one more $5,000. Like, just go for one more lunge. And he's like, yeah, okay. He's like, that's it, I'm out. I've got no more money. I'm like, okay, you've just given your strategy away. So anyway, missed out, unfortunately, by a few $1,000s. But
it's the age-old thing I say to when I'm onboarding clients or trying to attract them aware in their discussion, I'm saying to them, because I asked about auctions, I said, look, number one thing is don't go in pairs and triples or quadruples. Don't bring kids or anything else. No. Have your number worked out the night before.
Yep.
It's a walk-away number.
Yep.
Test it. Think about if it sells for $1,000 above that, does that feel good? Because that's going to be, you don't want to be calculating it. How often do I see, and you would see, people bringing out their calculators during auction, reworking out stamp duty and everything else. Yep. Well, you're telling the other buyers that you're very close. Doesn't mean you can't win it. But you're giving away strategy by doing that there and then, boys. 100%. Have your number down, be with confidence, move on.
There was a guy 2 weeks ago, in a certain suburb, and a particular agent we do a lot of business with, and he was the only buyer in the mix. However, during the negotiation on the auction floor, he's like, I need a few minutes. Like, okay, strange, can I go in the house? Yeah, absolutely, no one's in there. Vendor's not there. Walks in, gets his computer out into the study, and looks and renegotiates his spreadsheet and finding out what and how he can get an extra $25,000.
That's worse than a calculator.
It is worse. I've never seen it. And
that's good.
Me and the agent were like, do you think this is going to turn out a benefit or a negative? Because if this could potentially go south by him revisiting the figures and realising that he's paying well over his budget. And we're both looking at each other like, well...
Was he holding the highest bid at that point in time?
He was the only bidder. We had already
okay.
We had already got him at a price.
No, you guys are sweating.
So we'd got him at 1,450, and the owners potentially would have taken 1,400. So we're already in a position where we could try and sell this property and negotiate it out, done, complete.
Yep.
We're like, let's just try and push a little bit more. As what we should do is for every position, and that's why we get our fees at good fees.
Of course. Yep.
And we said, let's do this for another 25. Let's go for 1,475. Let's squeeze him. And then he's like, okay, I need to go inside for a moment. 5 minutes had gone past. We're like, what's going on? Like, do you think he's going to renegotiate downwards? Like, this could come back and haunt us. We're like, no, let's stay strong.
I was going to say, strategy-wise, your strategy cannot be to go check on him.
And there was an agent inside. He was messaging us saying, mate, he's redoing.
I can see.
He's like, no, it's a gift, and we're like, oh my god. Anyway. A minute later, he came out 1,475.
He did go up. Because even if he stayed firm, he might have...
1,475, got it done, closed the deal out. And that just shows you the benefit of an auction, right? You've got to go to auction. You've got to have the strategies in place. And the advantage of having experience. Like, you've experience, whether it's on a buyer's agency role, whether it's an auctioneer and also an agent who work really well together, which is that relationship's got to be key.
All right, you say it's the way to go, and you're definitely selling, let's say, on sellers. But from the seller perspective, right? That's your client.
Absolutely.
Your client's not the buyer. Once they buy, you want to shake their hand, bottle of champagne, and make them feel good.
Yep.
But that's not your client. And look, from my standpoint, sometimes when we go to auction, it's purely because my clients are so, do you think we should be spending that much money? I'm not sure. It seems like a lot.
Yep.
Go to auction, we pay more than potentially what we've got before. And you know what? Every time, they're still ecstatic and still happy.
Exactly. Because
they go, I'm assuming, sort of, I'm not a psychologist, but internally they go, it's fair. It's what the market value was on that day. It was
pay.
transparent. Whereas the day before, we might have got it for 40 grand less.
Yep. But they weren't sure someone
they would have
else wanted
always gone, oh, what if?
What if I was the only buyer? What if I paid overs? Even if at auction, they're still thinking that they probably did pay overs. But
That's my point. They literally do. Sometimes.
But they think it's also, it's fair. Okay, I had competition. If I sold it today, someone else would be willing to pay $5,000 less than that. So that sinks well.
And I've had the other side where at one property in Sydenham, we had a decent budget. We were prepared. Agent, rightly or wrongly, was pretty adamant we're not doing something beforehand, and I was encouraged to do something before anyway. Decided not to. We were the only bidder.
Interesting.
So we ended up securing it. I hope he's watching, for about $80,000 less than what we had approved to spend before. So then my client thinks that I've got the golden goose. And amazing. Now, which
is great, and that's why you have experience on board, and that's why you go with a buyer's agent sometimes, to be able to know when to hit the go button, when to withdraw, we as auctioneers and agents, I guess you get to a point where we love working with you because buyer's agents are so great. They're going to get paid on success of the purchase.
You definitely got the same motivation, right?
Correct.
Like all three, auctioneer, seller and buyer's agent, all need a transaction to occur.
Absolutely.
My motivation is to get for the least. Your process is to try and get it smooth and within a relative time frame. Agents there to get the most.
Yep.
But all of us have got the same objective.
Correct.
We are keen to get a transaction done. If you I find the biggest thing is just we're all, as long as we all, not always the case, but I think if we remain respectful and transparent,
but everyone's got a strategy as well. So our strategy is different to what yours is. We're working for the buyers, for the vendors, you're working for the buyers. So whether you push the go button before auction or whether you do it on auction, you've just got to know how to go about it and what to do. And having someone like yourself is knowing an agent's strategy, potentially knowing their strategy and picking their strategy, rather than a buyer not knowing anything what's going in front of them. So huge advantage. Right?
I said to you earlier, I'm not going to mention the name, but prior to the starting, we talked about an agent in particular I'm doing a deal with at the moment, who 95% of the time is an auction individual, and I'm doing a deal with him before auction. I've got a massive trepidation because it's not something I've seen him do before. There must be, I'm pretty confident the vendor needs to sell, so an earlier date and everything else, expedite thing. But it's sort of stepping into the unknown. And even so, I've got a network of buyers agents that I talk to who've done deals with him before, because I haven't done one specifically with him. And the feedback I've got is he loves to go to auction. It'll be an auction like anything he says. And then I've been surprised it's been the opposite. So leaning on that experience, but also adjusting to the cards that are dealt to you. Obviously, each vendor has a different motivation.
Absolutely. And so unique at the moment, whether it's mortgage stress, whether it's just looking at upgrading, downgrading, whatever it is, everyone's so different. Every market's always different. But their motivation will change. You just got to pick the right vendor if you want to go for a cheaper property. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Correct.
Finding a property that's got no interest or low of interest to be able to then try and get it for a better price, potentially. But then if you've got a stubborn owner, I had a recent owner that was about to lose the property in 13 days after the auction. We could have secured it for 1.716. Ideally, they wanted 2 million. We at the auction only had 2 registered buyers. One third buyer was the person who lived behind. They wanted access to knock it down to get access to their acreage. Interesting. So we said, okay, cool. What are you willing to pay? So during the auction, one of the buyers walked away, the strongest buyer. The other buyer said, I'm not interested anymore. The other buyer, who was the third person behind, said, I'll pay 1.2. Now, we knew how much stress was on the owner's perspective because they were about to lose their house.
13 days, right? So there's a...
Long time. Well, not really long time.
No, not a long time.
But a long time for the owners, because those 13 days are horrible. The mortgagee's about to come and literally knock you out.
That 1.2 might be the golden goose versus getting...
But we said to them, don't take 1.2. We think we can get better. So long story short, for 12 days or 11 days post-auction, had 1.78 to a 1.8 offer from a buyer, which they would have ran at auction. Owner said no. Property's now in possession.
Oh no.
Because...
this sounds like a really great story.
It's horrendous.
That's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
Because they still wanted 2.
He still wanted 2 million. And he said, no, I've spoken to the bank. They've told me that I can have a few more months. Not the case. Took the sign down, repossessed.
Oh no.
Haven't looked into it to see if it actually has signboards gone up and all the rest of it, but it's terrible.
I think that's where a experienced auctioneer or a selling agent comes in hand, because you imagine your first day on the job, not saying you wouldn't have had that, but you wouldn't have the experience or confidence to go, no, that's way. You would have probably, not saying you would have done the wrong thing, but first day on the job, you'd be like, 1.2, 13 days getting repossessed, do this.
Take it. So they only owed 400,000, so to me, even now, it's like...
You're like, well, you're 800K up.
I probably would have taken it at that instance, not knowing that I was going to get a higher price, but just to get the stress off my shoulders. But Unfortunately, they got themselves in that position.
Correct.
Didn't pay the money for a certain period of time without going into it, and they're different circumstances. But for me, I'm like, oh my God, like I had goosebumps on the auction. I'm like, this is horrendous, trying to do everything I could. These buyers walked away. I got the phone from the agent. I said, can I call your buyer? Called the buyer and he's hung up on me. Like I did everything possible to get this property signed for them. I sold for them, but I couldn't do it. I walked away. I'm like, oh, how disappointing, how sad. Yeah. Because they weren't young people.
In the end with that one, you're talking...
Not young people.
Well, you're talking about 1, 2, you basically got an offer of like 1, 7, 1, 8, a couple of days out, and they've shot themselves in the foot. You can't lose sleep over those ones. There's ones you lose sleep over, that's not one.
Yeah, during the auction I was disappointed and sad, I guess you could say, because I wear my heart on my sleeve and try and do everything I possibly can.
Proud individual, mate.
But yeah, when it came to that, and the agent told me that conversation and what happened during those meetings, without going into that, it was laughable. It's sad, but it's laughable. Like you're not taking our advice because you truly believe your property is worth a certain price, but you're never going to get that to that price in this market. You're going to lose your house. An agent's going to come in and sell it for whatever reason, no motivation other than just to get a quick commission.
Yep.
Mortgagee in possession, everyone loves one of those.
Correct.
He's not going to get all the money.
Look at my smile. Unfortunately, because I'm on the side of the buyer, right? So
that's why you can't even advertise mortgagee in possession these days, because of that reason. They know.
And you shouldn't. I get it because... But there are ways usually I can dig in and find out or assess.
A few questions can get
between lines and things. Yeah.
Interesting times. But again, it comes down to process. It's process driven. It's whether it's on the auction floor or whether it's before auction. You've just got to know how to navigate through all the hurdles.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into some maybe some different sort of questions here. We obviously bid together at an auction. I was there, an auction breakfast point where I was at 176 bids in the day.
Crazy.
Is that the most you've ever had? I reckon you've had more.
No.
That was the most.
I haven't had more. I hadn't had an auction. I didn't have an auction after that. I had another auction, but I had one sold prior. Because I think that was a 9 o'clock auction off memory.
It was definitely early morning.
I think it was a 9 o'clock auction. My 10 o'clock had sold prior and my 11 o'clock was not so far away. So
we still got close to 11 o'clock, I reckon.
Yeah, it was a long auction, but again, I think it was 40 minutes off the top of my head as an auction time frame, which is my longest auction, even in COVID.
Yeah, right.
Even in COVID, because COVID was obviously all online and so forth. Never had a 40-minute online auction.
No, actually an online auction because of the timing of it. You can almost curb it a bit. Oh, it was crazy.
But good result though, right? Like
massive result.
Huge numbers over the figures because the vendors. We had meetings with the vendors prior, and we were a little bit concerned that we weren't going to hit the target that they wanted without knowing the figures off the top of my head. Blown away.
Oh, blown away. I remember
they were blown away.
Saw them put the sticker up and so forth at the end of it, and they were intense. It was life changing for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, incredible.
There was a few hundred.
Yeah, if not more. How many auctions on the other side? What do you reckon? How many auctions do you have if you had 100 in a row, so percentage wise?
Yep.
How many are one bid and done?
At the moment, this last 4 weeks, I reckon I would call it 60 to 70%.
Wow, that many?
Yeah. Yep.
Because you're including their one bid and maybe they're passing in and having to negotiate after.
One bid of negotiations.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep.
So one bid of negotiations. It's crazy. On Saturday last week, the 20th, what was it, 17th, I think it was. No, the 14th, was it? 14th? I can't remember what last weekend was, but we had 3 properties in a row, so one after another, each cul-de-sac location, which was really crazy, unique.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, cul-de-sac, I like this.
I love cul-de-sacs.
Second and then third, I'm like, what is going on? All properties, one buyer, passed in each property.
And done.
And then sold post-auction.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so that age-old statistic, right? 70%, it's probably, I think it's 72% of auctions are won by the first bidder.
Correct, yeah.
And I do say, well, sometimes that scenario where just one bidder there, but I also think there's an element around, we talked earlier on about bid first, bid strong,
correct.
Take control of things.
Yep.
I think that, actually this is really an interesting one. How long has it taken, what's the longest time to get the first bid out of a crowd? You said 40 minutes is basically your longest auction.
Yeah,
to get a bid.
I find this one.
You're pretty good getting.
I was about to say I find this interesting because there are some auctioneers. Well, there are a lot of auctioneers out there that do struggle with it.
You don't seem to. I've noticed that.
I generally find I'm pretty good at not only getting the bid but getting a reasonable bid. But if I don't, and we know that it's going to be a tougher one, we've got a strategy.
Yep.
Without saying what our strategies are, obviously that's what comes down to the auction itself. But I'm pretty good at it.
Is it also, without going into strategy, is a little bit of agent going, these people over here thinking this, these people over here thinking
Yeah.
and that pre-research, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
You've got to do a lot of research.
You've got to know what's going on. You've got to know who your strong buyers are. You've got to know a lot of stuff. And again, without going into it, but you've got to be...
Keep your secrets.
Yeah, I think that differentiates myself to be able to have another auctioneer at your place is why are we so good at what we do and get a clearance rate, and we're in 87% or 88% on the weekend, which is huge compared to the industry, which is high 60s.
Yep.
But it's from these small things that we do prior. But to get a bid, sometimes buyers or agents knock bids back. That's okay, but why are you knocking that bid back? If it's well below expectations, that's okay. But if you've got a bid, I would rather potentially pass something into someone with a live bid rather than passing in at no bid or a vendor bid, because what's the benefit of that? And again, different situations, different environment. But for me, first bids are quite easy. I say quite easy.
Easy view, like you said, you're not blowing your trumpet, but I do think you got that, all of them have gift of the gab, but I think you got the gift of connecting. You make it feel, it feels like you're at around that campfire, someone's saying a good story, we're engaged. I've been at auctions where I'm like, okay, I've been you read the same thing.
Correct, yep.
And I've sat there and gone, this feels like we're in church. You said hell, I said church. But I just feel like there's echoes, and just the individual trying and trying, and I'm going.
And it's whether it's lack of experience or whether it's lack of knowledge of what's going on, or lack of reading the room, or lack of communication, because so often you see that there's no communication between agent and auctioneer, or there's no training that's been provided for the agent to know what to do. Most of the time you'll see an agent just stand there. If you see that, then that's perfect. That's what you want to see, is an agent just stand next to an auctioneer going, perfect, you do it all. It's your show.
That's what you want. You actually want the agent not to move.
As a buyer, yeah.
As a buyer, but not as an auctioneer.
No, I definitely.
What do you want as an auctioneer? You want them to be
an auctioneer to work the floor and be able to talk to those buyers.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise...
For me, it's good for you at that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, great for you, terrible for me. Well, that doesn't happen to me very often because our clients are trained. Well, they all know that, how to do it, and we work on that behind the closed doors and in training sessions. But as a buyer's perspective, you want to see that stuff. You want to see an agent do nothing and just stand there and look around and watch and count the birds and all the rest of it. It's interesting to see.
Definitely see.
And you want to see that as well, right? Like you want to see, you read the room.
Most auctions I go to, I definitely I've very rarely seen an agent not be good at that element.
Sure.
At engaging and so forth. Because I actually think there's maybe a little part of it. If they're not good at that, not being funny, but they're probably more keen. They're probably the people who are keen to do a deal beforehand.
Correct.
I mean, that's I believe that's more often than not advantageous for a buyer's agent with a buyer. Not all the time, but I think we can get a price better than an auction. That's my own opinion. So maybe those people you're talking about who aren't great at that, they're just naturally nervous of it. So getting a deal done beforehand is advantageous for them because it takes away their nerves.
Yeah, correct. And that's all skill levels completely different. There's some agents that have got specific, they know exactly their role. A lot of our agents that we work with know their role exactly.
Yep.
Know who they're going to talk to, know the buyer's names and so forth, know the budgets and just push them in the rest of it. However, a lot of agents may be nervous because it is nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking for me to call an auction. Every time I do an auction, I get nervous. But that's a good nerve, though. I enjoy that. I embrace that nervous.
Yep.
And that energy then gets expelled onto the floor.
Must do.
It's interesting to see as a buyer, you want to see not much action happening.
Correct. Stagnant or stale is a good thing.
That is a good thing, and not being able to get that first bid, because if I was buying at an auction, not that I ever buy from an auction process, I wouldn't be bidding first. However, my advice to people is complete opposite, because if you're not bidding first, and my strategy is completely flawed, and not flawed because I haven't used it, but I pass on a lot of different information, but really specific ways and tactics to how to bid at auction.
Yep.
But it's got to be strong, it's got to be fast, and it's got to be to deter the others. Because if you don't deter other bidders, what's the point of putting your hand up every $5,000, $10,000 bid, $20,000 increment?
Yep. You've
got to say, hey, I've got more cash than you. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. So for me, I wouldn't bid at an auction unless I knew it was on the auction, unless I knew it was on the market. For myself, but again, I don't do that. My wife, unfortunately, does all that for me, which is great. So
I got asked the other day from an agent, said, would you ever bid in your own property? I straight said yes, but maybe that's because I'm on this side all the time.
Right.
That for me, this is so comfortable.
Sure. Well, this one, we didn't buy this at auction. It was failed auction. Then we turned up after auction, negotiated.
Nice.
There's no way we were going to buy this at auction.
Yeah, beautiful.
Only because, again, I just don't do that. But I'd sell everything by auction.
The different way of buying versus saying,
correct.
Every time I get a new client on board, one of the things we do is we look at all the stock that's either on the market a long time or has been on and hasn't sold in the last 12 months.
Right.
Just you want to kick those tyres and
That's-
go. Oh,
you've
you
gotta-
look, that
They're
three
ones
better July last year. How did they go? Now sometimes it didn't sell because they had ridiculous
Expectations.
expectation.
Correct.
Other times it didn't sell because it's got a studio at the back that's a third bedroom that you've got to leave the house to get into. Well, that might be good for my client.
Yep,
They might have a
exactly.
kid who's that age, at late teens. That's actually an advantageous thing. But you can get in that time of the market why it didn't sell.
Absolutely. So, Chris, why would someone come in to utilise your services compared to trying to buy a property themselves?
Well, sometimes it's obvious is they're scared of you.
True.
No, there is that. I will talk about a little bit. There is people actually have nightmares of going to auctions. Like the thought of going to an auction is actually almost like tears them apart and keeps them up at night, sweats the night before. And so there is a big chunk of clients that come to me. They've been to an auction. They've been swept away by how professional it is, where the price ended up, the guide versus and how the agent is, and we need Chris. We need a buyer's agent there to be able to hold their hand. One of their biggest fears is actually not winning or losing an auction. One of the biggest fears is actually what happens after the auction. If you talk to them,
Oh, really?
yeah, they're really scared about, well, how do
The
I
sign of the
negotiate? Well, no, if they've not won.
Oh, right.
It's the highest bidder, let's
Perfect.
say,
Okay.
and they've got to negotiate. That's someone's worst nightmare.
Well, it is a bit nerve-wracking. Imagine when I take buyers in, I sort of
You can read it, right?
yeah,
They're not-
and they're really nervous. And for me, it's like, hey guys, I'm just going to be really transparent. You want to buy this? Owners inside the other room, they want to sell this.
Yep.
Let's take everything away. How much you want to pay?
Yep.
And if
Break
you
it
have
down.
that rather than overwhelming, guys, like that pressure, like take it all away. And I think having someone like yourself where you can just
Well, I
be
was going to
that
say,
front door.
typically, right, you've got the vendor in one room.
Yep.
You've got the auctioneer or the agent as the intermediate, who are being paid
Yep.
by the vendor. You have a buyer who's then dealing directly with them. So it makes perfect sense to me being there.
Absolutely.
You basically have two lawyers, in
Correct.
a way,
Yep.
going, what can you do? What can you do?
Yep.
Oh, we can do settlement, we can do this. That'll get done. Yep, great. Takes the pressure off it quite
Exactly.
quickly. Otherwise, a big chunk of my clients are working professionals and just do not have time
Just
to
time poor.
assess, inspect. Specifically the Sydney property market is very challenging, I think, to get your head around. We talked about earlier on, like, not only the auctions different from one suburb to another, price guides are different from one suburb to another.
Correct, yeah.
And even property, one area might, 500 square metre blocks are common, and in a west it's 100 square metres is very common. How do you gravitate and get your head around? So that, and just being able to do the inspections for them. And then there's that piece around off-market, pre-market, negotiating before, that is advantageous to clients, but also is a value add that they can see. Sometimes they see a property sold and they're like, I wasn't aware that property was even up. Like, and I know sometimes they're offended. Like, I know the agent. I met with her, and she told me she's going to keep me informed. And then she sold something without me.
So that's a pre-market opportunity where they're reaching out. You know that agent. They've told you about a property. Then you reach out to your clients before it even hits the real estate domain. All those homely websites.
Yep. I've had times where I'm speaking to an agent. One last year in Marrickville where called an agent. We had done one successful deal before. We've now done 3 deals with that individual. I described the property. He was like, oh, actually, I went and did a market assessment on a property quite recently. I probably would suit that, but they're not looking to sell put it on the market 2 months because they need to fix a wall,
Sure.
some structural differences, and paint it more vanilla. I said, but you want to come in as it is. We came in as is. My clients were a bit peculiar, so they actually liked the various colours, like purple and green. I'm talking like
Awesome.
quiet splashes.
Great.
My client liked it. We just talked about a number. It was sensible. It allowed that vendor, they moved to Perth, so they were like, and we just did a long settlement.
Awesome.
Now, had we probably would have purchased in the next, let's say, month, that probably wasn't going to come on the market for 3 months. We would never have even seen or inspected it.
Huge advantage.
We talked about cul-de-sac. It was in the cul-de-sac, so my client's like, this is perfect.
They're so good, cul-de-sacs. So quiet, so peaceful.
So great. You just know it's not going to be a thoroughfare.
Absolutely. You need that quiet, especially if you're a family or you're worried about kids running out on the road and all the rest of it, if it's not fully fenced and all that stuff. So great locations.
All of that. And traffic and
Absolutely.
so many positives to it.
What's another advantage, obviously, as a buyer's agent? Is obviously there is a fee incurred, but that obviously outweighs itself by showing and by being able to potentially get a property for less than what the skill set of that client could potentially be, because their job, let's face it, unless they're a real estate agent or a negotiator in their own job, they don't really get a chance to negotiate all that often.
Yeah,
So
true.
employing someone who can negotiate and does it daily much advantage? Huge advantage.
Yeah, you've set that up nicely. Yeah, definitely. Even I'm actually surprised how many people engage me who actually are professional negotiators.
Interesting.
So they're in IT software, they're in some sort of sales area, they're day in, day out. But what they also know is they're an expert in that field.
Yep.
They know all the systems, know exactly what the competitors are. They walk into here as a non-expert going, I can't learn this in a short period of time to what Chris can do.
Yeah, sure.
So big on that. My aim anecdotally is I said to clients, I can't guarantee it, but my aim is just try and save at least 2 to 3 times, if not more, than what my fee value is worth.
Perfect.
And historically done that. I think on the couple of occasions I haven't done that, it's where a client actually, they find a property and we engage and go through a process of buying a property that I'm aware the vendor wants probably too much, and I'm sort of directing going, we can look elsewhere, take some time, but emotion takes over.
And they want that property, unfortunately, and they need to pay that little bit more.
And then definitely the other part is on that expertise. So whether it's just assessing the property, due diligence, I love to give advice if it's open to renovations, what could be potentially done to the property, connect them with the relevant trades and services that could fulfil those needs. Let's talk about what we're here today, auctions.
So value add.
Oh, huge value add. And auctions, I talk to clients very early on, if we get to an auction, these are what we're going to do.
Yep.
And I even break it down to a week out, to the day before, really assessing. We do full comparables, live up to the minute, like we do not rest. If it's a property sold the night before, we're including that because that changes
absolutely
multitude of factors. Absolutely. That breakfast point one, the client that won, the people that won that were an underbidder the night before.
Oh wow!
And what they bid was actually about 500k more than what they bid the night before.
Interesting.
But they found a pot of gold behind the couch. So really coming to clear number.
Yep.
Because in the end, auction to me is a number. You need to have what your number is, you are 100% comfortable to walk away from. And until that point, there's no point going to an auction. I've heard people talk, I have 2 numbers, have the idea number you like and the number that you walk away. My rule of thumb is ignore that, just have the one number, keep it really simple. And your question you have to ask yourself the night before is talk to your partner or talk to your broker or buyer, whoever it is. And just talk to somebody else and say, inform them, at this number I'm going to walk away.
Correct.
Get them to vouch for that or bounce off, check. Are you sure? You've got a bit more in the bank, you sure?
Yeah.
What if it might mean you add more into your kitty? Might mean you drop your budget, doesn't matter. Then go into auction, particularly with as a buyer's agent, I've got one clear number I'm working with.
Correct. You're not going to get confused and you work and just go hard and get to that point and walk away.
Yeah. And
but knowing that you're going to be happy after that figure as well. I always say to clients or to family, they're like, well, how do I bid? How do I secure this property? I only caught up with a friend who actually just went and bought a property the other day, 6 months ago, and now he's about to move into his house in 2-3 weeks' time. And the first time I was seeing him for that time, he's like, Chris, the best advice you ever gave me, which I gave him advice at that time just to go in, go hard, go strong, and make sure he deters the other buyers. And he'd saved himself over 100,000, he said, by doing that strategy, but knowing what that figure was. And I said, you've got that figure, whatever that figure is, I don't know what it is, I'm not going to tell you or ask you. Nah. That's your independent, that's yourself, your wife, and your family. You know that figure, but go hard to that figure. Don't stop. Don't think that you potentially can get it for 20,000 less or save yourself 5,000, 50,000 less. Go for it. If you spend that and you then lose that property for an extra $1,000, I sleep well that night, knowing that you paid as much as you were willing to pay for that house.
You've really assessed it. Yeah.
Otherwise, if you walk home or drive home and go, shit, should have put another 5,000 towards that. We would have bought that for 5,000 more. That's disappointing.
I had an auction where client had approved the night before to spend 2.23, went to auction. That's where the auction went to. We won at that number. Now, whilst it sat at that number while they went, the agent and the auctioneer, rightly so, went to every buyer under the sun. But I reckon it was about 10 minutes of waiting when they went back and forth. Because the vendor also was happy to sell but did want a bit more.
Bit of an adjusted reserve.
Maybe. Yeah, on the fly. We end up getting my client, so I'm looking at the auctioneer, right, I'm on the other side of the road, she's over there but behind a bush. So she can see everything, but I can't see her.
Right.
When we won, as I'm walking close to the bush or to her, I'm thinking she's not going to be happy with me because I've spent, in a way, because I feel responsible.
Absolutely.
I've spent her maximum amount.
Yep.
What did I see?
Just tears, smile.
Smile, yeah, some tears later on. I can't believe it.
So exciting.
But because we talked to that number the night before,
you had a clear strategy.
She was not, but I still go, I wish I got it for less. Of course I do.
Yeah, I've seen so many people that turn up to auctions and then say, can I look at the house after they've just secured it before they even sign a contract? I'm like, no, you can't do that. You need to sign that contract first. Because they have just know that they've spent way too much money.
Have you ever had a bolter, like someone win the auction?
No. I've had a couple of instances where buyers won't sign or vendors won't sign after, and you've just got to negate that pretty carefully. But no bolters. No, not yet. Fingers crossed.
My brother's a buyer's agent up in Brisbane.
Right.
And he was at one, this is like maybe post-COVID time. And he said the guy just got in his truck and drove off.
Well, Queensland's different too. You don't need to give ID, right?
That's right, yeah.
You don't know who they are.
Don't know who they are until they...
that's a different story, isn't it?
That's Cowboys. Cowboys up there. That would be... Yeah, I've never seen that either. I was in the Sydney market, and like you said, people are ID'd and so forth, but... Yeah.
It would be a situation you don't want to be in. But in saying that, if it does arise, then there's ways around it and what to do and how to go about it. But again, as an auctioneer and I guess as a buyer's agent, we sort of don't get to deal with that too much because then it falls back onto the owner. Not the owner's, the agent's perspective to be able to then resell it or then go through the protocols of going after them for the deposit and getting the sale done. I've had buyers want to, once they've purchased, thinking that they had a cooling off period and then wanted to retract their offer and said that they didn't actually know that the rest of it. And so then we've had only one recently as well, actually.
Wow.
She'd purchased
Because you read that out as part of the terms.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So everything's all read and understood as
it's always position stuff.
Correct, yeah. So a lady only about this is only 3 weeks ago, this was about just before Christmas. She'd bought it for a premium price, huge price, and then just called and said, I want to get out of contract like 2 weeks later. And we're like, well, no, there's no cooling off. She got solicitors involved. We're like, well, auction conditions, sorry. So then the agent was instructed to resell it without anyone knowing. So she's gone through that process to resell it. So when settlement comes through, she'll still buy it, but then resell straight away. Yeah. And would she be able to get the same price again? I'm not too sure what happened. But
she would have to pay stamp duty as well, wouldn't she?
Correct. So she's losing. So stamp duty, I think it was just shy of $2 million. So $80,000 stamp duty.
Yeah, still.
Plus solicitors fees, plus transaction fees, agent
plus
fees.
Stress.
Can
you imagine trying to sleep at night with that over your head?
You wouldn't do it. You couldn't do it. Too much.
How do you... Was it English number one language?
Yeah, no, absolutely. She was on the phone.
I can see it sometimes with somebody whose English is not their ideal language.
Absolutely, exactly knew what was going on, had pre-authorised, all the documentation was in place, I signed the contract on her behalf, or the buyer's behalf. Yeah, all legit, knew exactly what she was doing, I think, overspent. Again, it comes back to that budget, knowing where your money is and where your limit is, rather than getting caught up in the emotion, which is why we love auctions and why I love auctions, hence why you should always sell via auction. Because that's what you want to do, an emotional roller coaster, and get people to pay higher and higher, an extra 5,000 or whatever I say, just like cheeky 5,000 or cheeky 10,000, but only 10,000 more.
Still let me not to ask.
They've already spent $2 million. It's only $10,000. Really, is that really going to make a difference or break your budget?
Well, I had one last year in Putney where my client, we spent the night before authorising things. We said 4.3 was his maximum, something 4.3 something. Can't remember the exact number. He was standing next to me in the auction. It was his choice. I said to him, don't come, because I prefer them not to come or at least be somewhere else. Anyway, he's standing next to me. Took a while, but finally got to that number.
Yep.
So I said, let's go outside and talk. Like, not ideal as we said about strategy,
Correct.
but I basically wanted to talk and go, we're done. Like,
let's go.
He nods. I walk outside. I turn back around. All of a sudden, I hear another bid. And I walk back inside, and there he is. And the auctioneer's like, because he didn't have the number, I had the number.
Oh dear.
So I handed it to him and I said, I didn't actually say anything. I just looked at him and went, and he ended up winning. He spent like another 150,000.
Not leaving anything on the table, that one.
No, but
now he's.
But you know what? He turned around, happy.
Yeah, and you're gonna look back and go, what a great $150,000 I spent extra. Yes, in some instances that's great. You look back and go, wow. And that's why I push people, not only because of the vendor's perspective, to make sure I get the best possible price for them, but just to make sure that they're not leaving anything on the table.
Yep.
And if I can manipulate that situation by getting an extra few thousand and know that someone else is going to trump them straight away, I've done my job. I've been able to get my vendor more money, as I promised to them, that agency, that I'm the best auctioneer out there. So that's why I always push and do not stop. Some buyers will always say, like a lady who just bought off me last weekend, she was in the crowd going, sold, knock it down, come on. I'm like, I had a laugh about it. I'm like, okay, great. But the week before,
are you the auctioneer?
But the week before, she was paying $3,350,000 on a property, and she still missed the home. which was 350 above her expected budget on that property, which was crazy, but it was just an incredible property. But then last weekend she just bought it for 3,080,000. And I was able to sell it to her. So I think it's nice to see and nice to be able to work with these clients and make sure that we made them still pay, because again she still paid 50,000 more than what the owner was willing to pay. Which was 80,000 because it was $3 million reserve. So I know that I was able to get an extra few thousand by using her and the other bidder to get them an extra $80,000, which is fantastic. Of
course. It's funny sometimes I have clients come to me going, we're going through the process and they go, geez, that property went for auction and went and sold at a good price. I'd love that. Let's say it's over 1.5. And I always say to them, yes, that was the number that secured the day, because my client might say, we've got 1.6. You know,
that if we can buy something like that.
But we don't know if 1.5 would have won the day against 1.6.
Correct.
You know, just because it sold 1.5, that was who was there the day.
Absolutely.
If you then bring 1.6, that buyer might have had 1.65.
And it could have been their perfect scenario, which is why you go to auction in that exact instance. You don't know how much someone's willing to pay for a product or item, or we always talk about houses, but in anything in general. How do you know that property is only worth that? Well, you don't until it goes to auction and have people compete for it. Otherwise, you can use comparables and say your property is worth $2 million due to comparable sales. But if you've got 3 people, 4 people, 2 people wanting to buy it and fight for it, there's your perfect scenario.
So it's the age-old thing, macro versus micro. What's happening? Who are the buyers there really on the day looking at that property?
And how much is
half of those buyers might not have been looking a month earlier, and half of those buyers will have purchased in a month, so it looks different again.
That same story too, a moment ago, that the lady just buying it for $3,080,000, she had no finance approved 3 weeks beforehand and could not compete on that property. We changed the auction date by 2 weeks to allow her to bid on that property. It's strange. However, that's a relationship with an auctioneer and agent by saying, let's push it back another couple of weeks because we've got limited buyers. We did.
And this will increase
got an incredible price for the owner. And again, obviously my result wouldn't be possible without those agents that we work with, but it's you've got to go to auction. But you've got to know the strategy before you go in there. You've got to have your number. You've got to know what to do and how to go about it. But then funny comment you mentioned a moment ago about buyers saying to yourself and also me that, Chris, I'll never buy a property off you. I only had a developer on the weekend. I'm like, without saying his name or area, I'm like, are you buying today or bidding today? He's like, I'm not buying. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm not buying off you. Have I ever bought off you, Chris? I said, no. He goes, I'm never buying off you, but I'll always sell with you. Well, not sell with me, so just use me as the auctioneer. It's great to hear that though, because you know that you get a premium result. And he's a big developer in this certain area, and it's great to hear that, because we know that, and I know that I'm doing a good job.
That's built over a reputation over a long time, mate.
100%. It's awesome. I love it. Love the job, love doing what we do and getting good results.
It's good.
And competing against a lot of people.
Chris here from Clarke Buyers Agents.
And Chris Scerri from Scerri Auctions.
Hope you enjoyed today's discussion and we talk all things auctions.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, and I hope you like the content.
So Chris here from Clarke Buyers Agents with... And then,
oh, right. Sorry, I thought you were going to say that.
No.
You go, yeah. It's that awkward moment we're looking at each other like, I'm waiting for the intro.
This is definitely on the bloopers now. This will be on the bloopers. So they'll crop this back. It's just you going,
that's the best.
I thought you were saying mine.
I was just waiting.